Right, ions. What are ions? Well, in the previous lesson, we know that ions are basically charged atoms. And that means when you have, when an atom undergoes a loss or gain of electrons, all right? So, we've also learned that there are two types of ions. Positive ions called cations and negative ions called anions. Now, ions actually happens quite often in nature. And one of the methods it happens is when a metal atom combines with a non-metal atom. All right, when a metal atom combines with a non-metal atom. Let's take a look at this example. Here we have the atom structure of sodium. Now, I didn't really draw out the nucleus because it's going to take up a lot of space. But be aware that for sodium, you will have 11 protons in there, all right? And if you count the number of electrons, you will see that it also has 11 electrons. How do I know that there's 11 protons in sodium? Look at the periodic table. And if you see the atomic number to be 11, that means as an atom, sodium has 11 protons. So this is sodium, all right? Now let's look at the other atom. This is a chlorine atom. Now again, I did not draw the nucleus. It's because it takes too much space. But chlorine should have 17 protons in the nucleus, all right? And how many electrons does it have? Well, if you count the number of electrons, chlorine atom also has 17 electrons. Now, when the two atoms come together and they combine to form a compound, one of them is going to lose an electron while the other is going to gain that electron. All right, let me put this electron here to be blue so you are able to clearly identify that that's the electron that we're interested in. When the atoms come close together, sodium is going to give out that electron. And the reason is because when it gives out that electron, sodium's energy level is now very good, very favorable, okay? And we'll talk about energy some other time. So let me draw the nucleus again. And sodium is going to give away that electron. So what we're left with is only 10 electrons. Okay? And I'm going to just color the green electrons back onto here. All right. So now I have a sodium ion. Okay? So what I have now is a sodium ion. And when you count the number of protons, it's still going to have 11 because that's what determines the atom. But now when you count the electrons, you're going to have 10 electrons. And so the positive charge of the atom, of the ion, is now has exceeded the charge of the negative electrons of that ion. So there's one more positive charge than there are negative charges. All right, one extra more positive charge than the negative charge. So if you have one more positive charge than the negative charges, what you have is a sodium ion with one positive charge, because 11 positive minus 10 equals to plus 1. All right, so that is this name of the ion, sodium ion, which is a cation because it's a positive ion, and the symbol of sodium ion is Na+. Now, on the other hand, when chlorine comes close to the sodium atom, it is going to receive that electron. So let me draw the electrons again. Now, these electrons are originally from the chlorine, but this blue electron now has been given to chlorine. And when chlorine forms an ion, it is going to be called a chloride. Okay? Now, some people will say chloride ion, but I believe that the name is redundant. When you imply the name "ide," you are immediately telling other chemists or scientists that you're talking about an ion. So there is no point to be redundant. And so you can say you made the chlorine atom is now made chloride. All right? Now what's the charge of that chloride? Let's count. The number of protons remains at 17 protons. And now if you count the number of electrons, you will have 18 electrons. So if you have 17 minus the 18 electrons, you get a -1. And so the charge of chloride is now -1. And when you represent that as a symbol, you will say a Cl minus with a negative sign. You don't write the numbers 1 in there. It's just like you don't write 1x. You just write x. So in this case, you just write minus or negative. So that's how you identify an ion, whether it's positive and whether it's negative. And you also learn how to determine the charges of the ions based on the difference between the protons and the electrons.